Hey everyone, this is Derrick Broze with the Conscious Resistance Network, and today we're going to be talking about the FBI, domestic extremism, and conspiracy theories. But before we do that, I'd like to remind you guys to bookmark theconsciousresistance.com, which is our website, the home of the Conscious Resistance Network, which, by the way, is an open-source, community-sourced website. So if you have content to contribute, articles, essays, vlogs, poems, cooking videos, what have you, reach out to me at derrick@theconsciousresistance.com and let's get you contributing to our website. Also, I'd recommend you guys following us on Minds, Steemit, join our Discord channel, support us on Patreon, please support us on Patreon, and sign up to our text list. And if you want to get our emails, sign up right there. And finally, if you want to get some kratom, however you pronounce it, you can get it from My Brave Botanicals, get a free ounce, and check out the CBD products and support our work at the same time. All right, so let's get into this. We got this new article here, says exclusive FBI document warns conspiracy theories are new domestic terrorism threat. And this is important, I think, because it's part of a long line of pushing this idea that conspiracy theories and those who question government narratives are a domestic terror threat or extremist threat. Now, that's not to say that everybody out there who's researching conspiracies got all their screws on, none of the screws are loose, but just to wholeheartedly go after a group like this, I think it does point to some dangerous territory. The FBI for the first time has identified fringe conspiracy theories as a domestic threat, according to a previously unpublicized document obtained by Yahoo News, which we have right here. It's called Anti-Government Identity-Based and Fringe Political Conspiracy Theories Very Likely Motivate Some Domestic Extremists to Commit Crime, Sometimes Violent Activity. And this was an intelligence bulletin sent to from the FBI to the FBI Phoenix field office in May 30th, 2019. So just less than 2 months ago, or just over 2 months ago, this document went out. And it probably went out to other field offices, we can assume. It says that conspiracy theory-driven domestic extremists are a growing threat, and it claims to be the first report to note this. It lists a number of arrests, which it says were related to violent incidents motivated by fringe beliefs. It also specifically mentions QAnon and says that people's belief in QAnon and the fact that, or the thought that Trump is fighting against a pedophile network or against the New World Order is one of these fringe beliefs. Now, obviously, there's some truth mixed in with that. My work, I don't endorse the QAnon theory, but there is definitely some truth mixed in with it. And the report says the FBI assesses these conspiracy theories very likely will emerge, spread, and evolve in the modern information marketplace, occasionally driving both groups and individual extremists to carry out violent or criminal attacks. It also says that the FBI believes conspiracy theory-driven extremists are likely to increase during the 2020 presidential election. One of the reasons they say this is because the political atmosphere has become more divisive, and they say also that the uncovering of real conspiracies or cover-ups involving illegal, harmful, or unconstitutional activities by government officials or leading political figures is also driving this. So basically, they're admitting that real conspiracies and cover-ups involving illegal, harmful, and unconstitutional activities involving government officials or leading political figures are driving people to look into this. So they're saying, without saying it, that confirmation that conspiracies do exist and that they sometimes involve high-level political officials and government officials is driving conspiracy theories to look into the idea that government officials and political figures are involved with this. Do you get that? It also says that President Trump and QAnon are named, and it says, it kind of breaks down what they say that the QAnon theory is, which according to them, Q, allegedly a government official, posts classified information online to reveal a covert effort led by President Trump to dismantle a conspiracy involving deep state actors and global elites allegedly engaged in an international child sex trafficking ring. Now, about 90% of that is true. It's just the part that Trump is leading the effort or is involved in this that's false. And that there's some good guys, white hats inside that are actively fighting for us. This new bulletin comes as the FBI is facing pressure to explain who it considers an extremist. You guys may remember that a couple years back, the FBI faced some criticism for labeling Black Lives Matter and other groups black identity extremists. And recently they've been facing pressure for not calling out white supremacists or white nationalists. And so they've recently changed the categories that they label extremists under. And these are the categories. It says they now classify domestic terrorism threats into 4 main categories, including racially motivated violent extremism. So racist, motivated attacks no matter which way they come. Anti-government, anti-authority extremism, animal rights, environmental extremism, and abortion extremism, a term that the Bureau uses to classify both pro-choice and anti-abortion activists. However, under this new categorizing, it seems like conspiracy theorists will be placed under racially motivated anti-government, anti-authority extremism. And this is the first FBI product examining the threat from conspiracy theory-driven domestic extremists. Say that 5 times fast. Conspiracy theory-driven domestic extremists. And provides a baseline for future intelligence products. This new category is different in that it focuses not on racial motivation, but on violence based specifically on beliefs that, in the words of the FBI, attempt to explain events or circumstances as the result of a group of actors working in secret to benefit themselves at the expense of others, and are, quote, usually at odds with official or prevailing explanations of events. They also say that, this is not new, but, quote, the advent of the internet and social media has enabled promoters of conspiracy theories to produce and share greater volumes of material via online platforms. So, they are hoping to inform discussions within law enforcement as they relate to potentially harmful conspiracy theories and domestic extremism. Or perhaps they're out there getting this into the heads of local law enforcement. Local law enforcement will distribute these intelligence bulletins to the local police department. So, it goes from the FBI main office to the Phoenix field office to the Phoenix PD, etc., etc. And then you have cops walking the streets. Look out for people who've got QAnon bumper stickers, or people who've got 9/11 conspiracy, information on their websites or their posts or on their social media. Now, they claim that they are not going after people just for protected free speech. You can read more of this. They talk a little bit about Pizzagate, and they mention that, and they talk about Alex Jones, of course. But really, what it comes down to is that, they're claiming they're not going to go after people who are doing protected speech things, like just, talking, researching, looking up information that is not accepted in the mainstream. However, they provide a few different examples that they claim were 2 men arrested in connection with HARP, who they said that these men were going to the HARP government facility because they believed it was controlling the weather and preventing humans from talking to God, and that they had been stockpiling weapons and ammunition. Of course, they don't show any evidence of this. They just cite certain documents. There's no hey, this man was arrested on this day by this law enforcement. So it could just be BS. And FBI Director Christopher Wray, in his testimony last week, said that the FBI is concerned only with violence, not people's beliefs, and that the FBI doesn't, quote, investigate ideology no matter how repugnant. We investigate violence, and in any extremist ideology, when it turns to violence, we're all over it. In the first 3 quarters of this year, we've had more domestic terrorism threats than the prior year, and it's about the same number of arrests as we've had on the international terrorism sides. So, it continues to grow according to the FBI. However, we have this one statement here from Joe Usinki, an associate professor of political science at the University of Miami, whose work on conspiracy theories is actually cited in this intelligence bulletin from the FBI, so they use his work. He says there's no data suggesting that conspiracy theories are any more widespread than they have been in the past. There's absolutely no evidence that people are more conspiratorial now. They may be, but there is not strong evidence showing this. He says, we're looking back at the past with very rosy hindsight to forget our beliefs pre-internet and JFK conspiracy theories and Red Scares. And he just talks about America has a history of believing in conspiracies, and he says for most of the last 50 years, 60 to 80% of the country believe in some form of JFK conspiracy theory. They're obviously not all extremists. And it's important to learn more about that. I definitely would advise you guys to read this whole article. I'm just trying to breeze through it and give you a little bit of a rundown because it is important. It's important to see where the FBI is at, because for quite some time, those of us who've been paying attention have realized that the FBI and other agents of the U.S. federal government see their own citizens as a threat. They label us the threat. They claim that we're the problem. And this is something that we need to challenge. We need to question. I recommend you reading through this document. It's not extremely long. I know there's other nuggets in here that will be worth sharing. And again, they do give a couple examples of people they claim were extremists, conspiracy theorists, extremists. Of course, they named the Pizzagate guy who went into the building and just shot at the floor, but they try to make it sound like he was some violent extremist. But you can go ahead and read this intelligence bulletin. And then I want to show you guys this report that I wrote back 4 years ago, June 2015. New report finds homegrown radicals greater than the threat of radical Muslims. This was coming from New America, Washington-based research center, and they basically said that there were 48 people killed by non-Muslim extremists and 26 were killed by self-proclaimed jihadists. This was back a few years ago. So they're saying that there are more attacks coming from non-Muslim domestic extremists than from radical Islam, radical Muslim extremists, which may be the case. I just want to point out, though, at that same year, I reported an intelligence report produced by the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI, which called attention to an apparent domestic terror threat from, quote, right-wing sovereign citizen extremists. And this report was listed all over. CNN and others ran with it, and all their titles said right-wing extremists, sovereign citizens are a threat. But then I actually read the report, and guess what? It doesn't even use the term right-wing or extremists or even mention the ISIS, because at the time they were saying, oh, domestic terrorists, right-wing extremists are more dangerous than ISIS. And yeah, it's important to understand that sometimes these stories, these documents and these kind of things get put in front of us. There might be an ulterior motive or a reason they're putting this message out there, but we have to dig deeper. But there is also the reality that there has been a history going back at least 10 years and before that of the United States starting to believe that their own people are criminals. In June 2014, I reported that the Department of Justice created a new task force that was going to tackle escalating danger from homegrown terrorism, and this was being announced by Attorney General Eric Holder at the time. And he says, we are facing an escalating danger from self-radicalized individuals within our own borders. And then, of course, those of you who've been around for a minute, you know about the MIAC report that was leaked in 2012 as a Homeland Security study that claimed that Americans who are reverent of individual liberty and suspicious of centralized federal authority are possible, quote, extreme right-wing terrorists. And some of the characteristics were people who own gold, who supported Ron Paul, who were libertarians, or who flew the American flag. And the document, that MIAC report, calls the U.S. founding fathers extremists, stating in U.S. history there are many examples of extremist ideologies and movements, including the colonists who sought to free themselves from British rule. Yes, they were extreme to the tyrants who were trying to hold them down, and that is probably why they are labeling quote-unquote conspiracy theorists and people who are seeking truth and bringing that truth as a threat and an extremist, because you are a threat to a government by waking up and questioning and standing in your own power and helping other people find their own power and standing up and saying, yes, I am powerful, I am beautiful, I am free. No, I don't need the chains of government. No, I don't need the chains of corporate power. No, I only need myself, my family, my community, and to help awaken and empower other beautiful, powerful, free human beings around me. And together, we come together and we change the world one by one heart, one mind at a time, one conversation at a time. And until that point, the government will still be a threat to our freedom. That doesn't mean you need to go out there and commit violence, because committing violence is the way the state operates, and that won't achieve freedom. It won't achieve true, lasting liberty. That can only be achieved one conversation, one heart, one mind at a time, and by opting out of the systems which enslave you. And I encourage each of you to research agorism, counter-economics, and find ways to jam truth into this system as you exit from its power. Until next time, remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Peace.